life is all about risk management. The way I looked at it is you really have to understand your zero. What is the absolute lowest point in the case of failure?
Okay.
Is it you are homeless and starving, or is it you move in with parents and they cover your health insurance?
Yeah.
And once you've defined that zero, you got to say, okay, well, how much am I willing to bet, and how can I hedge my bets?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I was moving back with mom and dad.
Yeah.
And so I was able to.
Living with them during your...
No, I was in the shared housing, but that's the, hey, okay, you can't afford rent, you can't afford food, like what is the absolute, right? And so once you have that zero, you can start making some more knowledgeable bets.
The dream is absolutely free. The hustle is so separate.
That hunger to be more, to do more, to give more.
You've got to go put in the work.
Success takes time.
What do I want to do every day for the rest of my life? Do that.
Brought to you by Mati Energy, it's The Healthy Hustle, a show where we interview today's movers and shakers, influencers, and entrepreneurs. Get an inside look into their stories and how they hustled to get to where they are today.
Hustle is waking up one day, the day before you die, and realizing you gave it your all, emotionally and executionally, in theory and strategy, and in execution.
On this episode, we're talking to Mitchel Gorecki, the CEO and founder of MyLivingLab. Get an inside look into how Mitchel hustled through 3 undergraduate degrees, started a career at a budding local startup before starting his own venture right here in Durham, North Carolina. Mitchel, thank you so much for coming in today.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure to have you here in the Bull City, a fellow Durham or Duke alumni.
That's fantastic. I'm enjoying the new space you guys have moved into.
Oh, yeah. WeWork's pretty incredible. Of course, you guys kind of led the drive over here.
Well, it was nice. We were with you in American Underground as well.
Yeah,
so
100%.
It's nice to transition and see you guys over here.
It's also always really cool to get to talk to Mati fans, because I feel like, Durham's a great place for us, but I don't always get to interact with them. And you guys have been like such great supporters of what we're doing at Mati.
Oh, very much so.
And I wanted to know like your discovery story for how you came to find Mati.
Oh man, so this goes way back when.
Yeah.
I've known Tatiana for a good while now. I was not quite in the loop when she was doing it out of her dorm room per se, but I do remember seeing the cans on campus and the first design and thinking, oh my gosh, this is like super cool that Durham has this. It's almost like the local only secret. You see anybody with a Red Bull and you're like, oh, that person's not local. And then watching that just grow, and it showed up in a Whole Foods, and I was like, holy smokes, like she is killing it. This company is just rocking it. And then seeing you guys in American Underground, it's been great to watch that transition.
That's awesome. And so you were on campus when Tatiana was on campus?
Yep. So I was Duke undergrad 2009 through 2013, and then my MBA in 17 and 18.
And you were quite busy during your time in your undergrad. It was kind of unique. I think it's 3 undergraduate degrees. Is that right?
A little bit. I would say I couldn't quite figure out what I wanted to do. So I studied biomed engineering, mechanical engineering, economics, and finance.
Jeez, dude, what a spread. I mean, run us through like the balance of 3 majors. Like I have friends that did double majors, friends that did like majors and minors, but like 3 at a time has to be a little bit of a load.
You get to meet some pretty amazing people. You get a lot of exposure to various departments. It's a astounding amount of lab work between the 2 engineering degrees. But ultimately, I felt like I was there to study. So I got the most out of it. How
were you kind of deciding what you wanted to go into?
Oh man, as far as MyLivingLab?
Yeah. Well, no. As far as what you were studying in school.
Oh boy. So I grew up on a farm way back when, and so I enjoy everything hands-on. Remember even building like barns with my dad. And so I knew I wanted something where I could actually be creative. So engineering was a fit. I really wanted to go to Duke. They were number 1 for biomed engineering at the time. So that was my absolute first choice. And then, of course, Duke basketball. And then when I got there, I had 2 parents who were doctors, and so they said, "Hey, you're gonna be pre-med. You're gonna go be a doctor." So I thought, okay, well, I'll do biomed engineering. I completely fell in love with the engineering side of it, and thought, well, I want more of that. So let's do mechanical. And then econ was just a really good fit as far as pursuing my business interests.
Yeah, holy moly, man, quite the mix there. That's super cool. And then But after you graduated, you jumped into more of like a corporate career, right?
I did. So I remember interviewing at Stryker and absolutely loving the facilities, but I just didn't see the kind of life trajectory that I really wanted. And so I declined the offer and said, gosh, let's see if I can find a really small local company to work for, and wound up working with a group called MaxPoint. So they did, it's like high frequency trading for online advertising. And it was a small team. I was one of their early data scientists. We were able to take that to about 450 and then public in 2014.
Were you there for the whole ride of?
Oh my gosh, it was a fantastic ride.
Oh,
Great
man.
learning experience. That was easily where I got all of my, I would say, management experience and exposure to how to lead teams.
Yeah.
Fantastic group of people.
How many employees were at Max Point when you joined?
When I joined, it was closer to, I want to say, on the order of 70.
70? Okay. Man, so kind of run us through the role that you were playing at Max Point and how you transitioned through the company's growth. So you kind of dealt with some big changes at a company like that, I would imagine, going from 70 to 450 employees.
So I was very fortunate. They had built out a lot of the data infrastructure, and machine learning was just becoming a thing. And so there was an opportunity for someone to kind of pull together the pieces and figure out how to apply this in an advertising context. And so with the help of mentorship like Michael Ells and Joe Epperson, we were able to figure out what were the systems that needed to be built to more efficiently transact these ads.
Sounds like you were given a lot of independence.
Very much so. Very, very fortunate.
Yeah.
Fantastic learning experience. And that is something we try to strive to replicate in our team because I really think it empowers people to
100%.
make meaningful changes.
Yeah. I mean, when you kind of just put an employee into a little cube and then don't let them use their mind, that's super frustrating. Why were you unique in that? Was it the position you were in? Was it your background? Why were you kind of given that?
I think a lot of it was it was something I really wanted.
Yeah.
And I remember my interview, it was with this guy who was wearing flip-flops in the morning. We were the first people in the office. And Human Resources came back over after the interview and they said, well, I guess you've got the job. And I was like, oh, really? That fast? And they go, well, you've been interviewing with the CEO this whole time. I was like, oh, boy. And so I think kind of the combination of impression and fitting a need for that firm really worked in my favor.
Definitely. The Durham and the Triangle scene is such an attractive place to go into startups. So it's cool to see that you were even doing that. And that was 2014?
So I first started working with them in 2012.
2012. So before you graduated?
Correct.
Oh, snap. Okay, so here we go. You're in 3 degrees, working as well. You have to have some time management hacks here.
So I think one of the big the ways I pulled this off was overlapping requirements. So biomedical engineering, very similar to mechanical. My thesis in economics was supported by Max Point. And so by taking advantage of sharing those resources, so that way when I published that thesis, it was actually a thesis that Max Point could then use in their advertising system.
That's pretty incredible. So kind of finding the best ways to double dip on what you were doing.
Precisely.
That's awesome, man. And then so the time you spent at Max Point, was that years or?
That was about 3.5 years.
3.5 years, and through that time, you saw the transition, went public, and then after you went public, was that your cue to roll?
So I think for me, I had been there at a point or long enough for the amount of value I was producing for the firm started to plateau.
I got you.
So I felt like I was just looking for the next transition, and I had always wanted to wear the more entrepreneurial hat and go start my own company. But I had absolutely no idea how to.
What was feeding that interest for you?
Oh man, I love designing and building things that actually produce value. And so in the exact scenario, I was living in this house and helping some of my friends find these shared living agreements. And the feedback from it was, gosh, I'm able to live in twice the amount of square footage for half the cost. Thank you so much. And so by
grouping in with roommates.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so by identifying ways to produce value like this in meaningful ways, that's just kind of those are the things that really attract me.
Sounds like that's been a really common theme for you, even from your childhood, building things that illustrate some type of purpose.
Maybe I'd say that's pretty fair.
Yeah. So you had this inspiration while you were at Max Point?
Correct.
Okay, so Max Point IPOs, you're in a shared living scenario with some roommates, and then this light bulb kind of goes off. But you didn't immediately jump into it, did you?
No, so I wound up reaching out to a ton of venture capitalists and got very minimal responses. I mean, at this point, I was running this model on a napkin, and found it really difficult to scale. I needed a team, I needed funding, you essentially needed that opportunity. And so I thought really hard about whether or not it would be worth it to go get an MBA. Consulted with people like Joe at Max Point, who essentially said, this is probably the next best step for you. And while I was in that MBA, I reached out to Howie Ree, who is in the I&E program, Innovation. Awesome. Oh my gosh, Howie's fantastic. And he said, well, I tell you what, let me make some of these introductions for you. Now that you've got @duke.edu on your email, let's see if we can hustle on this. And oh my gosh, so the first person who responded back was Josh Felser, who is, he runs Freestyle Capital. An awesome guy, enormously helpful. But it really showed me how much value there was in the connections to Duke, the business school, and actually getting the MBA.
Oh, yeah. So you had this idea, then you immediately jumped to venture capital, which is kind of an interesting leap. Why did you immediately jump towards venture capital as the only option?
Partly because it's ventures like these are expensive. They take a lot of human capital. There were founder contributions, but there was no way we could support a 6-person team for a sustained amount of time.
As opposed to going towards like angel investors or like friends and family, were those like already things that you tapped out, or?
Not quite, and we definitely received offers from those people. They just weren't at the level where we could really make the next commitment.
I see, because you knew you needed a certain level, and that level could only really come from.
Well, and an enormous part of it is the support and the mentorship and the connections that come from people in that world.
Yeah. It seems like a really interesting value proposition as a, like you said, kind of a napkin model to try to get a venture.
Oh, absolutely. And we struggled. And I probably pitched to about 80 different venture firms.
Wow.
With this napkin. I think one of my favorites.
Napkin in hand.
Big shout out to Josh Felser. Jeff Jordan, Josh Koppelman. These guys were really instrumental in pushing us in the right direction for figuring out what is the best business model for your product. What do you need to be building? How should you focus about growing your team? And what are the things you're going to have to achieve before having a really serious conversation with us?
Yeah.
And I mean, these guys provided ongoing mentorship for a very long time.
And continue to this day, I would
absolutely.
Yeah. So you decide to go into the MBA because it sounds like a great way to get connections, or was it really for the learnings through the program?
Based on my background, I am pretty confident with just reading books and gaining knowledge that way. So the actual schooling and class itself is not the core value. It's the connections, it's the networking, it's the better understanding of markets. And I still reach back out to professors like Professor Banford in strategy consulting for, oh my gosh, what do I do that? What is the perspective on this? So that continues to be very, very helpful. I mean, even continuing to have connections with people like Howie Ree is very, very valuable.
Yeah, definitely. So the time in your MBA was really spent kind of using this network to help bring value towards your startup. And the classwork was almost on the back burner, you could say, throughout this process.
So so specifically the way I looked at the MBA was, okay, this is a 2-year runaway time. I packed the 2-year program into the first year and bought the second year off to pursue the business. So essentially it was like a hedge against, if the business fails in this year that I've taken off, well, I'm just graduating with an MBA and won't be able to market myself.
What a cool way to think about it.
Well, life is all about risk management. It's the way I looked at it is you really have to understand your zero. What is the absolute lowest point in the case of failure?
Okay.
Is it you are homeless and starving, or is it you move in with parents and they cover your health insurance? And once you define that zero, you got to say, okay, well, how much am I willing to bet, and how can I hedge my bets? And so for me, it was I was moving back with mom and dad. And so
you were living with them during your.
No. I was in the shared housing. But that's you can't afford rent, you can't afford food. Like, what is the absolute, right? And so once you have that zero, you can start making some more knowledgeable bets.
That's pretty cool way to approach. I mean, decision making in general, but that's spoken like a true stock trader. It sounds like.
Well, but I think it's also very important, especially when recruiting team members, to really have the conversation of, gosh, what is your zero? What can I do to help raise that zero? At one point we had a team member who I said, gosh, if anything hits the fan, you can come live with me, and here's a car. We are going to make this happen.
Wow. Because you really wanted to invest in that person.
Yes, I thought this person was an absolute fit and really needed to be there.
Yeah, that's incredible. So the 2-year MBA gets finished in 1 year, and then you're in year 2, and it's kind of like, all right, time to grind, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So what were you doing in year 2 to really, I guess, set the stage for graduation?
So one of my favorite moments was Josh Felser at Freestyle. Okay. Going into summer said, I tell you what, in the politest way possible, don't call me until after the summer is over. You've turned down an internship, and I know that you're fully committed to this. And that was one of the big swift kicks that said, okay, we're cards out,
Yeah.
And so that was the first summer of full development time with a team. that committed us to developing this company.
Because you really had to invest in getting your app up and running, or I guess get some type of MVP out, or were you already operating?
No, absolutely. So by then we had produced an MVP and were able to have really meaningful conversations with venture firms. So this is going back to people and saying, hey, gosh, we're at X number of properties, Y number of tenants. Here's where we are with the technology, and would you be interested if we can hit X, Y, and Z?
Okay. Well, before we jump into too much about like the story of growing Living Lab, let's just talk about the inspiration and what it is for everyone listening.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So what we found is that one of the biggest expenses for an average American is going to be the roof over their head. And for the majority of people, about 1 in 3 Americans, they end up living with other U.S. adults. However, it is very, very difficult.
Is that stat across like all age groups?
We're just looking at adults here.
Just looking at adults. Okay, wow. That's interesting.
And so the trick is, though, is how do you find people you trust to split the housing with, who are not going to default on you, who you're actually going to like, and then their preferences for like budget, location, and timing have to actually be compatible with one another.
Oh, yeah.
And so how do you pull all of these together simultaneously? And so the Living Lab platform helps you find other people with compatible search windows based on those parameters.
That's awesome. And this was a need that you kind of were inspired by because of your own scenario, and then some research led.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can go on Craigslist and Facebook and go through these
lists.
It's
like a piecemeal thing.
It's a coordination problem.
Yeah. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to live with roommates, of course live with roommates, but live with people I've known. So I can't imagine being the person that's out on the island almost like trying to find this group of people when you really don't know what's out there.
Well, and talking about risk, I mean, there's way more risk in those contracts than people really understand, right? If I am the leaseholder with 3 other roommates, I am banking on those other 3 coming up with the payments, and if they don't, it's actually my problem, not anybody else's.
Yeah.
So part of that is figuring out what is the correct way to structure the risk to make sure everyone is well off.
Yeah. So you started with this this problem that you found. Of course, like it seems like every good entrepreneur finds a problem, and then really were inspired by this. It sounds like.
Well, I mean, as I love MaxPoint. It was a great firm, great culture. What we did was awesome. But at the end of the day, you were writing code for advertising and profits. It is really meaningful for my team and I to write code that then helps put roofing over people's heads in a very affordable way. I mean, we help people move in, and we consistently hear, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Like, this is the only reason I'm able to afford to live in this city. And I absolutely love the people I'm living with. And those are all the things that get you out of bed.
That's really cool.
I am solving a meaningful problem in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm. And you really are seeing at this point with where your team is, like, you're kind of doing end to end all the way from the coding to the physical implementation of these moves, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that is part of the hustle, right?
100%. Yeah. That's why I really love I think you guys are unique in that not only are you building an app, but you have this physical piece of the business. And you're right, like, you guys have to get out and, like, move stuff around. Like, you can't avoid that in what you're doing. And it's not always glamorous, right? I mean...
Oh, no, there's the 99% of it is not glamorous. Yeah. What you read and what the articles you see, that is the 1% that is fun. But there's an enormous amount of slog that goes behind that.
Oh, 100%. So let's get back to kind of the venture capital pitching, where you have this MVP concept. That's kind of I don't know. It seems like a little bit of a glamorous idea to some people. Like, oh, I'm gonna go off to the valley and I'm gonna pitch this concept. But give us like what it's actually like in the ground when you're having to do those pitches and prepare and then follow up. Like, it's a very intense process.
Oh my gosh! So for our first money in, I believe we pitched somewhere on the order of 80 to 90 times. I think I want to say I bought 3 times the amount of return flights from San Francisco than actually going, because these meetings get moved around so frequently. And it's a lot of personality. It's a lot of trying to find a good fit for somebody who really understands the vision in your firm. Yeah. And in my eyes, when you found a good fit, it was immediately obvious.
Really? Okay.
I mean, I remember the very first person I ever pitched to, the connection was through David Spitz to Jeff Jordan. And it was, you left that meeting going, oh my gosh, can I work for you? Like, this was, you clearly you are such a good leader and people person and know how to make something succeed. And so you really want to identify who are those people that you just click with like that, and make sure to maintain those connections.
Was that when you were going into the meeting, was it who can move my business along? Who can I, connect with the best? Who's going to be the best mentor? Like, did you have some certain things you were on the lookout for throughout those pitches?
So it's interesting, and Bamford would say people are not a competitive advantage, and which they most certainly are not. But it is very, very, very important to find people and a venture firm and a partner who really understands what you are trying to build, what it's going to take to get there, and that you are going to hustle. Because at the end of the day, they're making an investment. And at this level, it's not an investment in a balance sheet or a company or an idea. It is in the people. Things are going to change, and they want to know that you are going to be able to see that and execute on that. And so eventually we wound up meeting a group called Pair VC, which is run by Pejman and Marr. And they just had an awesome team, and it was so clear that they had the operational expertise. They were happy to make the investment, and they were just a great team to work with. And so that was just an immediate yes in our minds.
And was that someone that started working with you while you were in that final year of your MBA?
So yes and no. It was actually after graduation.
After graduation.
So I had reached a point where it was end of graduation. Myself and another teammate had graduated. We had to decide, gosh, are we going to keep doing this?
Yeah, exactly. So this is a huge inflection point.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, at this point I had sold a car to make sure we could keep floating operational costs.
Holy moly.
And so this is the point where you say, okay, let's talk about that zero again. And am I really going to do this?
That's a big time. So run us through the emotions. Like, what are you evaluating? Like, how did you know that you should keep going?
For me, it was really what gets you out of bed.
Okay.
It was, what do I see? What am I passionate about? Am I able to produce value in this market doing this? Is there a product market fit? Is there an actual need for this? Is somebody going to eventually part with dollars for this service? And the answer for our team was yes to all of that. And so we just had this blind faith that somebody is going to see this in our team. Somebody's going to agree that this is a big market, and they're going to be willing to place a bet on us.
When you looked at the competitive landscape kind of at this inflection point, are there any other people moving in this space of like bringing roommates together? Because I know like college dorms do this in a really bad way. Like it's like, I like to stay up late at night. I like to, it's really superficial, but I didn't really look into the competition. Are there other people playing with you guys?
This wave of co-living is definitely growing.
Yeah.
It really feeds into what I'm going to call the Uber economy of accessing things on demand.
Oh, yeah.
And so this idea that people don't want to own these large clunky assets like a car or a house or even a large lease on a house. And so how do you break those up into more manageable pieces where you can actually pick and choose the bits you want to consume?
Yeah.
And then you've got the fact that, an astounding number of people already live in co-living arrangements. It's just not managed by another firm. And so there's a lot of inefficiencies. There's a lot of risk. People lose a lot of money. And so, there absolutely are a number of other players out there in this space.
So the way that you almost see Living Labs playing into some of the current co-living scenarios as well as turning housing into co-living scenarios as well.
Oh, absolutely. So our focus is finding good people. And once we find good groups of people, then we go and find the property that is best compatible for them, which is a bit of a pivot from how the rest of the market views this.
Okay.
A great example would be Bungalow. Yeah. They place bets on the actual property and then find the people. And so eventually we see there even being a possibility for working with groups like Bungalow to help fill their properties.
Oh, yeah, because we have all these houses, but we don't really have the people to fill them.
Right. And at the end of the day, it's an absolutely enormous marketplace.
Housing in general.
Right.
I'm not going back to a cardboard box. We all are going back somewhere. So when you were graduating and you made the decision to move forward, what were the next action items on the list to keep Living Labs afloat?
Oh, man. So
because it sounds like there was cash is going down, inspiration and blind faith is up, but now you have to move forward, right? And it sounds like you got to get cash up is what it sounds like to me. But are there some other moving pieces here?
Well, and so that was why I went into full-time fundraising mode.
Okay.
And so while the team was here continuing to build out the product and refine the operations, I was out in San Francisco making phone calls, coordinating.
Yeah.
And that was where we found Pair. And
so you had this, what was the function of the product at this point? Were you connecting roommates right now?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We at that point, we had reached a pretty substantial user base.
Yeah.
And things were humming along. We had a very good idea of what the product was going to look like. We understood what the back-end processes were going to look like.
Okay.
A lot of the MVP had been built and was accessible.
Can you speak to how many users you had at that point?
It was about 514.
And this was all in Durham, right?
Correct.
So, and Living Labs is still Durham focused, is that? Okay, cool. So, that's pretty significant for an area like Durham, it seems like.
It was pretty good. I mean, one of the advantages we get is it's not like it's not a good that you choose to consume. It's not like choosing to buy a newspaper. Everyone needs a roof over their head, and so you have it's an expensive asset. So you've got very motivated consumers who really can't afford to mess up this transaction, and so they're willing to try lots of different platforms to try and find the best housing fit.
Oh, 100%.
And so from that perspective, I think that's what lended towards a very good adoption rate.
Yeah, I guess from my experience too, like you do try a bunch of options when you're looking for a place to rent. I mean, all the different housing platforms that I went through, just like trial and error until you find something you kind of like. So this is an interesting because since then, like you've been scaling the app, and I think there might be some learnings that you have to share with other people that might be trying to scale an app in that position as well. Can you share any like tips or tricks that you've had for like trying to really gain some foothold on the app store even or within your market?
Oh man, so there are table stakes like getting the technology right. I mean, it has to work. You have to abide by T's and C's. You have to meet Apple's requirements. But then on the other side of that, oh my gosh, it is all about people and hustle. Everybody tells you, gosh, find the right partners, find the right investors, really put time into it. I cannot understate how important that is. There is absolutely no way we could be here today without our team.
So are you guys doing a lot of like recruitment one-on-one of people, or how does that process work?
I wouldn't say today.
Yeah.
The way recruitment, a lot of it was luck. A lot of it was engineering that luck. There are a certain amount of things that are just left to variance. The only way you can take advantage of those is by being ready for them. I think one of my favorites was I came up with the saying of never say no to a beer.
Okay.
Because I remember Howie
I live by that saying as well, so I'm right there with you.
Well, Howie calls me one day on a Friday and he goes, hey, I've got like an extra 10-minute window in a board of directors meeting at Duke. Do you want to come pitch? And I'm thinking, gosh, I'm supposed to be getting on a flight right now. Like, is this really worth the opportunity? Like, this is the last thing I want to do. But said yes, and we got the team all dressed up. We showed up, gave our pitch, and Jillian Manis at Structured VC basically jumps out of her seat and goes, "You're meeting my partners. You're meeting the general counsel of Airbnb, and I am going to write you a check." And so that's one of those moments where you go, "Wow, I'm really glad I didn't deny that opportunity," and that I was prepared. I had my deck. I had my team. Everybody was on call. I mean, it was like the back call, right? But there must be at least 200 moments like that.
Yeah, where the stars aligned. But to your credit, you probably put yourself in a position to be lucky.
Well, but it's my first venture capital meeting ever. I got the invite on my phone, looked down, I saw the address was San Francisco. I went, well, I can't afford to go to San Francisco. And David Spitz, who had put us in touch, goes, no, you're buying the airplane ticket. And that just showed me, you really have to put yourself, you have to be in a place to take advantage of those opportunities when they present themselves.
It's interesting, you have to make the investment to go get investment, right?
Oh, there's no question about it.
And like, on your end, it sounds like you had a lot of time and money invested in going to these people and doing these pitches. Can you share with, someone who might be in the same position struggling to find that financial well-being? Like, how were you kind of making these trips come together? Was this, from you had some savings, I assume, but making those ends come together, I imagine, super tough.
Well, I think it goes back to that. What is your zero?
Yeah.
If buying the plane ticket means you can't afford a meal that day, this probably is not the best choice.
Yeah.
And so absolutely, I would have loved to go straight from undergrad into building this business. I don't think I would have had any of the similar expertise to really understand what in the world I was doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of it was saving. At one point I sold a car.
Yeah.
Because I was like, gosh, I need to be able to afford that plane ticket. And this is what it is worth to me, and this is how much I'm willing to bet on it.
And was that a numbers conversation in your head, or is that kind of I guess more of like a qualitative, like this is what I know is right?
Well, right and wrong is difficult.
Yeah.
It was more of okay, how many dollars am I going to get out of this? How much runway does that get me?
Yeah.
And at the end of that runway, what is going to be my choice then?
Yeah.
Because if you're not going to commit again, well, it makes no sense.
Oh, yeah. So to where we're at today with Living Labs, I was just checking out the app. It seems like you guys are up and running with a little bit more of a comprehensive product now than the product that you guys were out pitching with.
Oh my gosh, it's so much more refined.
And what are you looking forward to next with Living Labs?
Growth is always number one. Number two is more engineering hires. We have an astounding amount of data that makes us a really fun product to build. With the goal of maximizing the kind of the likelihood or the outcomes of these housing groups. The other piece always is fundraising, and then moving to new markets.
Where do you find like your time being focused now, kind of as the founder and the leader of this team?
So we just so Pear runs a demo day where they had about 270 investors come to listen to a pitch of 12 teams. So coming off of that, we've decided to raise another round of funding. So that is entirely consuming my time right now. So last week, I think I did 36 in-person meetings in San Francisco.
Holy moly. Is that kind of how so is San Francisco really the place where there's funding for concepts like this?
I do hate to say that is where all of the venture funding is. San Francisco and New York, but I mean, almost every New York branch has a branch in San Francisco.
That's really interesting. Maybe you could speak a little bit on the Durham startup scene and how it's either like helped or kind of has the geographic location hindered you at all?
Yes and no. I think one of the things Durham has many great things about it. Super cost effective. The value of a dollar goes so far. Talk about housing. I mean, when we pitched this to Pear, I said, gosh, like here's what a 2,200 square foot home on a golf course costs. And they're like, wait a minute, does it not have a sink? And so there's that piece. The other piece is there's a huge amount of intellectual capital here. I mean, it's one of the highest PhDs per capita in the country. There's a huge amount of space. Growing tech scene. People like David Gardner and Carey, as well as Bull City Ventures, are doing a great job at pulling funding to the area. Those guys are awesome and always very interested in listening to ideas. So it is growing. We're definitely on the toe end of the growth.
But would you say that having a concept that's very tech focused, you feel like you should be like? Do you feel like you should have been here, or you feel like you want to stay here?
Gosh, the only other place you would go is San Francisco, but the cost is so outrageous. When we were pitching for funding, we said, okay, Pear, you would like us to come to Palo Alto. Here's the cost difference if we stay in Raleigh-Durham. And our burn was about a third.
Wow.
And so while we were sustaining a 6-person team in Durham, the other portfolio companies could barely do 2. And that's pure. I mean, it's purely. I mean, as soon as you look at the rent, you've lost half your investment.
That is wild. But really cool to kind of hear some of the perks about Durham coming from someone in your position. I think that the last thing that I would really like to hit on is how you've been structuring your pitches to some of these venture firms. I think a lot of entrepreneurs and other people hustling, come to this podcast to listen to people like you, and would love to hear some of the tidbits about like kind of how are you structuring those decks to really illustrate the value that you're bringing as a company.
Oh man, so there's a lot of various strategies on this. I think the first one is just do your homework, really understand who you're talking to, and what makes that person tick. And what other investments that person has made.
And you're really customizing these decks, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The other is there needs to be, in my opinion, there should be an emotional sell. There should be, there has to be, why. And it can't just be, well, this is going to make a lot of money. Because then I would say, well, somebody's going to swing in and eat your lunch. This has to be, gosh, we are out with a mission to produce something that we're going to motivate a team to build. Here's how we're going to build it. And then more specifically, here's why we are the people who are going to make this happen. Because that is always one of the big questions, right? And there's no contract that commits you to continuing to run the fund. I mean, you could essentially walk away. And so you have to convince that person that this is your dying dream and you will make it happen even if they don't want to join you on that mission.
Yeah. Well, from my opinion, just running through what you've done so far, it sounds like you've really done a great job to illustrate your dedication to the cause. And I mean, it seems like that would inspire.
I super appreciate it, but I still go back that there's no way we would be where we are today without our team.
And so the Living Labs team today, you have 6 people on the team?
Correct.
And where can people find Living Labs?
We are actually just down the hall from you.
Yeah.
So we are 110 Corcoran Street, Durham, North Carolina, in the new WeWork building.
And online, people can go check you guys out at?
Yep, www.mylivinglab.com.
And on social?
Similar, MyLivingLab.
Awesome. Guys, we are here with Mitchel Gorecki, the CEO and founder of Living Labs. Mitchel, thank you so much for coming out here today. I'm super inspired by your journey so far as an entrepreneur, and I can't wait to see what you guys do next.
I super appreciate it. Thanks so much, Jacob.